Hello viewer, as the XJW community spends its time trying to understand, is there a Marco, who is Marco, well, we'll just have to wait and see. But in the meantime, I thought I'd discuss something, because the whole channel's actually about Jehovah's Witnesses beliefs discussed, and it just got railroaded, sidetracked by Prosygate. But anyway, I thought I'd discuss something which I may have mentioned on another video a long time ago, but I can't even bother going in to find out which one it was. Anyway, this is going to be a slightly different version of that. It's to do with the fact that if you reject the Bible and the story of creationism, that the only thing left to believe in is evolution, which is, funny enough, is the road that Lloyd Evans and Little Lloyd went down. They went down the road of evolution. I think I did watch a couple of their videos, and I wasn't convinced, to be honest with you. I wasn't convinced. You know, so why are we at this place anyway? Why does this question appear anyway? Well, the reason being is because the whole problem that we've made for ourselves as a species comes down to two questions which have obsessed us for thousands and thousands of years. And those questions are quite simply, where do we come from? And where do we go to when we die? And funny enough, the answer to the second question, once you can come up with some sort of reasonable explanation of the second question, sort of answers the first question. So why have we been obsessing about this for thousands of years? Well, it's quite simple. The reason why I've been obsessing, especially with the question about where we go to when we die, is because we as a species cannot accept our own demise. We cannot accept that when we die, that is it. And we have struggled with that concept for thousands and thousands of years. It's a bit odd, because when you think about it, animals who've been around a lot longer than our species have been on this earth have successfully navigated their journey on this planet by just either eating, sleeping, drinking, shitting and reproducing, and trying to make it through the day without getting eaten, and have been doing this for millions of years. And yet we struggle with their version of what life is all about. We don't know, no, there's more to life than just those basic things. But it's a bit hard, because when you look at some animals in the animal kingdom, especially apes, you know, there isn't a big difference between a human and an ape, you know, really. Can you imagine an ape knowingly buying a Make America Great Again hat and putting it on? I can't imagine an ape doing that, but I know thousands of humans in America did that, so maybe there isn't a great difference between the ape and the human at all. Yet, bizarrely, we believe, of all the millions of varieties of creatures on this planet, that we alone, our species, are the only ones who get a second shot. All the other animals seem to acknowledge in some kind of way that the end is nigh when it approaches. They seem to know it. I had a dog, and he was 11 years of age, and it got to the point that we knew he wasn't going to last any longer. And when it came to his last day, he seemed to know. He seemed to, I don't know how he knew, but it was like he somehow sensed that that his time was up. And you get animals who are in herds, and sometimes when they know their time's up, they will actually go away from the herd and slink away and die on their own, because they know themselves. Yet they don't think, if they do think, that they have an extra life. But humans, because we have the ability to think, we think, no, that can't be in it. That can't be it. This can't be it. We're better than animals, are we really? You know, and therefore that we do have a second shot. And so what we've done is, if you go to any culture, any time in man's history, going back thousands of years, we have created this afterlife. We've created this spiritual life that somehow that we carry on after we die. And you can see that in excavations, you know, going back to civilizations going thousands of years. You can actually see that in relation to chieftains who die, sometimes you'll get in his grave goods to take with him into the afterlife, his favourite horse, his armour, his favourite pet, what a shame, and also his wife. And it's you know, it's a bit of a bummer if you're married to a chieftain and he dies and he's 20 years older than you, and he's been a bit of an arsehole, you know, and they say, oh well, it's your solemn duty to accompany him into the spirit realm. Actually, no, I've got another good 20 years. I don't really want to accompany him. Sorry, it's the way we are. And that's them. And then we see this even with the Egyptian pharaohs as well. It's all about trying to get through to the next life. And there's the Egyptian Book and the Dead, which has all these different stages of, you know, getting to the place where you need to go. Because we can't accept our own demise. It really is. And when we think about this in man's history, this concept has absolutely crippled us as a race. So what happens is, of course, is that if we then say, no, when we die, there is something else, we then create this other world, this spirit world. And within this spirit world, there are other spirit creatures who control this spirit world. And at the top of all these creatures is your head spirit guy. He's your main man. And obviously in the Bible, it's God. In other religions, it's other guys. And then, you have to have a guy who controls this spiritual world, and to ensure that arseholes don't get into it. They go somewhere else. They go to another place and it's very hot or very dull or boring, I don't know. Birmingham, I don't know. But they go to somewhere else, these people. And in doing that, what happens is, therefore, it answers the other question of how do we get here? Because if you create a make-believe guy who has created heaven, you have to also say this, well, while on the earth we're being tested, so the same guy must have made the earth. We're tested on the earth, and depending what sort of, you know, for a good egg or not, we'll ascend, you know, in various stages of heaven, depending, you know, on what sort of chap we've been on the earth. And so, therefore, the creator of the heavens also created the earth. And there we have the two questions answered. All because we can't accept our own demise. Unfortunately, this concept has created probably near enough every war and disagreement through our history, because it comes down to the fact that with all these different people come up with their own forms of worship, we believe that our God is better than their God, and we have a duty to go in and save their souls. So we have to go into their lands and kill them for being unbelievers, for one. I think the Israelites did that maybe once or twice, because obviously their version is completely wrong and our version is completely right. Let's go and kill them all and then get them to somehow accept that our religion is right. And that model, that model in the Bible was taken up by all the guys who went from Spain and Portugal, who went over to the South Americas, and my religion's better than your religion, and we must save your soul. Excuse me a second. All because of this belief and worship structure that we've concocted because we can't accept our own death. And then you get people who are quite readily happy to kill themselves because they think they're going to get rewarded in heaven. So they just think this is only a temporary thing here, and happily will get the reward in heaven. And you get people who will go to war again because they think that they're doing a righteous and just thing, and they will get rewarded again. Just imagine if everybody in this world, or going back centuries, that this concept that we've created, imagine if from day one that humankind accepted that this is the only life we'll ever get, and that's it. Do you mean, if you think about it, how many people would then be so willing to die for any other cause apart from maybe protecting their family? I doubt it. Basically, if you believe this is the only life you'll ever get, you won't be ready to give it up. You won't be ready to just sacrifice yourself for somebody else's war, for some religious war or some territorial war. You won't do it because you say, there's no point me going doing this because there is no reward. There is no heavenly reward. It would solve probably most of man's problems if we could somehow get out of our head this concept that there is a life after death. It has just brought us more death in the thousands and millions because of this concept, and it's landed us in the trouble that we are today. And the thing about it is also, a lot of people believe in the Bible because you say, well, it's an old book and it's survived through the centuries, so it's obviously there's some sort of something that's been protecting it. But at the end of the day, we can go back to the teachings of the Egyptians, which are comparable timeline when the Bible was written, even sometimes earlier before, and we can still read their writings. They're all there. We can see them all. They're all there. And yet, bizarrely, their form of religion, the Egyptian form of religion, is dead. Nobody in even Egypt believes in that form of worship anymore because they've all been converted into Muslims after being attacked. They've all been converted. Nobody believes that in Egypt anymore. Yeah, that's an old religion and it survives, so surely, it's sacred. No, it isn't. You just imagine, for instance, that out of the fallout of what's happened in Ukraine, that it did go tits up. There was a nuclear war and the whole planet's devastated and every USB stick or any drive was just wiped out. All books were destroyed and the only survivors were a group of young children, and 3 books survived. 3 books that survived through the Holocaust. And these are the only points of reference for these children to understand where they came from and where they go to when they die. And those books are the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And so they'll look at them thinking, God's sake, this is the truth. This is the truth here, yeah. Oh, and you can see within it the fight between good and evil. They're all there, and all these characters, like, they would believe that prior to the Holocaust there were orcs and goblins and elves and dwarfs and wizards, and you could see the good and the bad, and Gandalf the Grey and Galadriel and Saruman and Sauron. You can see that, you can see the battle between good and evil. I'm thinking when they die, they go to Grey Havens and get a boat over to the Undying Lands. In fact, when you look at the Bible, there's a few things in the Bible which are absolutely could be in Tolkien, like the Nephilim and Goliath, for instance, and all the bizarre miracles that happened, and you can see this. It's quite believable. The Lord of the Rings. Oh, you're talking about the Bible, yeah. Anyway, you can see the comparisons. So just because something's old and it's been around for 1,000 years doesn't make it true or right. But at the end of the day, if we then say discount the Bible and the story of creationism, is the only alternative then evolution? Does that explain those fundamental questions of how we got here? Because we've had to discount the where do we go to when we die, because personally I believe when we go to when we die, that's it, it's you're gone. But the other question of how we got here is even more interesting, because with an evolutionist, if I remember this rightly, and I'm having to go back to when I was at school here, when we got taught evolution at school, I haven't really gone back there since. Hold on a second. If I remember the story rightly, somehow a cell was formed with a bolt of lightning, and it landed into a swampy mix. So lightning, acids, amino acids or whatever, swampy mix, boom, the first cell was formed. Fantastic, hey! Sadly it dies 5 seconds later. Shit! Luckily there's another bolt of lightning, yay! Swampy mix, yo! Forms in the swampy mix, fantastic! 10 seconds later it dies, shit! So, another bolt of lightning, swampy mix, cells formed. It lands in it. 1 minute later, shit! And so this goes on till eventually there is a cell that somehow forms and somehow multiplies, and from that single cell that we have the abundance of life that we see today. Oh my God, I think you have to have a greater leap of faith to believe in evolution than you do in trying to believe in the Bible. You know, I think it's too easy. I think we as a race are too easy to just swallow, Lloyd Evans, to swallow, you know, easy stories, because you don't have to think about it. It's either God or it's evolution, accidental or purpose. It's so easy. It's like teaching kids to believe in Santa Claus, because in the morning, and if the presents are shit, you know, the kids could say to the dad, these presents are absolutely shite. And then the father turns around and says, well, don't blame me. Blame that fat, useless bastard. And they say, Boris Johnson. No, not Boris Johnson, but he's a fat, useless bastard. Santa Claus. It's so easy, you know, to just rubbish, you know, to just solve things with just quick fixes, you know, this and that. Because, for instance, a creationist, if questioned by an evolutionist, would say something like, okay, how do we get here? It was God. Okay, and what did God do? He made the sun, the moon, the stars, and the whole material universe, and everything, and all the living creatures on the earth. Okay. Where's God then? Oh, we can't see him. Well, where is he? He's invisible. So I need to believe an invisible guy who made everything. Yeah, okay. Where did he come from? Oh, he's not come from anywhere. What do you mean? Oh, he's always been. So God's always been. Yes, he has. Right, let me get my head around that. So there's a guy we can't see, he's always been, he made everything. Well, that makes sense. But then a creationist could speak to an evolutionist and say, right, how do we get here? Oh, there was the Big Bang. Oh, okay, yeah. And it can be proved because something called I think it's the redshift theory, which proves that we all, you know, all the material universe is sort of expanded from one central point. And that's where the explosion was. Right, okay. That sounds interesting. So what caused the explosion? I don't know. Right, okay. And where did the material come from for the explosion in the first place? I don't know that either. So at the end of the day, none of the answers are very, very satisfying at all. And this is the problem. Because of our obsession of where we came from, this problem of where we came from sticks with us all the time. What is the answer? And if you're looking forward to me for the answer, I don't know. Excuse me. There isn't an answer. There isn't an answer. If I look, this is only my personal point of view, but when I look at the world and see animals, I don't see evolution. I see adaptation. I see within the animals and with humans itself the adaptive gene, should I call it? I don't know what else to call it. That somehow it can improve the survival of the species by changing with its environment. However, how it adapts and how the gene changes for all the future descendants, I don't know, and I'm not the only one, because even scientists do not know how genes adapt. They just don't know how it works. And it absolutely blows my mind when I try to think about this, and I can't understand it. And I watch a lot of nature programs, and still it's always, we don't know, we've yet to find out, nobody really knows. But you can see adaptation in the animal world and even with humans. The thing I don't understand is, for instance, if we are trying to adapt, if the adaptive gene changes the DNA for the future generations, wouldn't you think by now this adaptive gene would have made it possible for me to have a fine head of hair, which I do not have? Why is it that males still suffer from male pattern baldness? Because it would be quite handy for me to have a full head of hair, then I wouldn't burn my napper when I go to iron napper. You know, this is what I struggle with. Why has my father suffer? Why does he suffer from male pattern baldness, and so do I? And potentially my son, although he's slagging me off at the moment, saying, "Oh, look, baldy, baldy, baldy." You know, I'm saying, wait for another 30 years, son. Baldy, baldy, baldy. Now, why is it that our adaptive gene hasn't thousands of years ago recognised that it would be handy to have a full head of hair so our scalp wouldn't burn, and we could and to stop potentially getting skin cancer on the top of our napper? I don't understand this. I don't understand the way the adaptation works. Surely, and is it mind over matter? If I think about it hard enough, if I think about it, because obviously within my ball sack are my sperm, right? and within the sperm is already the gene which decides if my children are going to be slapheads or not. If I think about it enough, you know, and meditate on it, can I change? Can I adapt my genes in the DNA that ensure that my son wouldn't become a slaphead? I don't know. Is it mind over matter? How does it work? Or is it just coincidental? For instance, you do get this, there's a wee bird, I can't even mind his name, but he has a bill, and his bill, instead of like that, is a bit skew-if. But it's really, really handy. But in the environment this bird with the skew-if beak is, it's handy for him to get into the seeds that enables him to survive. But how did that happen in the first place? When there was a clutch of eggs, and they all hatched, and this guy turns out with his skew-if beak by just a whatever reason, we have this happening all the time, and he's a complete one-off. And all the rest of the bird says, oh my God, you're never going to pull with a beak like that. But then, of course, he goes out and he managed to crack into the seeds easier than the rest of his brothers and sisters, and they're all a bit, a bit hungry looking. But he's turned into a fat bastard. So it means when he lands on top of other birds, they go, get off you fat bastard, lose a bit of weight, because he's been gobbling all the seeds because his beak's a bit skew-if. So eventually he does find the birds that will accept him, because he's gone on a diet for a little bit, and they have eggs. But just because he was born with a skew-if beak, does it mean that all the rest of the chicks of his chicks are born with the same disfigurement, which actually coincidentally enables them to survive better because of breaking into the seeds of an environment? How does that work? Or if we're saying is, oh no, that they develop over time, because they really do need to break into the seeds. How long does it take for them to develop the off-center beak before the actual birds die off because they're hungry? Does it take hundreds of... How does it happen? How does it happen? A little bit of wearing one, it slightly changes the gene to the adaptive gene to the other. How does it happen? I don't know. It totally blows my mind. And if we think it is all mind out of matter. If birds are thinking about it hard enough, they can change their beak so that the eggs come up with the slightly off-centre beak. But what about trees? What about trees? And this has fascinated me since I was a small child. What about trees? You guess I think it's the sycamore, ash and the maple. You know what their seeds look like. Their seeds do that. I'd show you one, but there's where I live, there's none of those trees. And what happened? What happened for them for that to eventually come about? Because surely the tree would have had to have designed it himself or improved itself with its adaptive gene. But do trees have genes? I'm confused. What did they do? Did they, in like true Lord of the Rings style, did the trees start speaking to each other? And then they just said, look, we've got a problem here. Our seeds are just falling onto the ground. And all our root system is sucking up the water, so they're not germinating. Add that to the fact that the sun's not reaching the bottom of our trunks because of our branches and the foliage on it. Has anybody got any ideas? I'm sick. Year after year after year, producing thousands of seeds and not one of them germinating. What are the chances? Any bright ideas out there? And one of them goes, yeah, I've got an idea. What's the idea? Well, you know those things that land on our branches and shit on us all the time? You mean birds? Yes, birds. Well, they've got those things that carry them in the wings. Yes, wings. Well, how about we next year develop our seeds that they are connected to something wingy. So when the wind comes, it will safely, and they won't just drop, they will safely sort of parachute, although parachutes haven't been invented yet, they'll eventually go away and they can travel not just feet but hundreds of yards, and then they will grow and eventually will cover the whole of the planet because of this, this design of the seed that slowly parachutes down in helicopter style. Brilliant. And that's what they did. But these aren't creatures. This isn't mind over matter. How did that happen? How did they change their makeup to design a seed that floats away hundreds of yards captured by the wind and safely touches down? Who designed that? Could the tree... If we believe in evolution, we're to accept that somehow the trees did that. I'm struggling with this concept. Just accidentally in 3 varieties of trees. And what about the plants, for instance, who have got an appetite for flies? How did that happen? And what about the other tree who decided, you know what, I'm not buying into this whole helicopter nonsense, it's bollocks. I'm just going to do this dead easy. I'll produce a type of fruit that birds are going to come and eat, and they'll enjoy the fruit because it's really tasty to them, and what they do is they'll fly, you know, hundreds of yards, have a plop, and my seed will be in the plop, and that will go down to the ground and it will germinate. It's easy peasy. Who needs helicopter seeds? How did that happen? How did you get this symbiotic relationship between plants and animals? It blows my mind. I have no idea how this happens, but to me, evolution is not an explanation, and creationism, as in the Bible, is not an explanation either. It just completely blows my mind. And so I don't have an answer. I think when I look at the world, there's another answer, but I don't know what it is. I think that to me there's too much. To me there's too much design, but I don't accept the concept of the God in the Bible just because we can't accept our own demise. So that's it. I'm giving you no answers at all, and I'll tell you something here that really, just a small thing, which I see every year, and there is no answer to this mystery. Every year in my back passage, two swallows come, right? I'm saying my back passage without referencing Littlewood. So every year, I just did shit. Every year, two swallows come into my back passage from Africa, and they only live a few years. Last year, before we moved in, a cleaner cleaned up my back passage, missus, and took away the two nests. And the two swallows turned up on different days, and they then had to rebuild a nest. Now these nests, I think, were generational nests, which means the same family would have been using them year after year. So basically, the two that turned up wouldn't have built the original nests, because if they don't get blown down by the wind and knocked down by humans, they just use the same nest. So they were able to build a nest using the mud from the river across from my house, and they'd never built a nest before. Somehow they turned up from Africa in my back passage and looked up, knew something was wrong, and subsequently started building a nest from never knowing how to build a nest before. It is incredible. Can you imagine us trying to build our accommodation with only our mouths and not being built one before? It won't happen. We'd all die. But anyway, they did this. They raised 5 chicks. The 5 chicks then every night used to come back to the nest and sit on it while the mother stayed on one bit and the father stayed in the tree or whatever. Till eventually what happened is the mother and the father, when the chicks started to fly back in at night, started to not fight with them, but persuade them to find accommodation elsewhere. They managed to get them to go, no, that's it, you're out the home now, you're grown up now, you're going to make your own way in life. Off you go, you lot. And what happens next is the mother and father bizarrely built another nest. And in this other nest they raised 5 chicks. And this was around about the end of August time. Come October, we have flying around in our back garden the original chicks, the second group of chicks, and by now the mother and father. And one by one, they started to fly away. And unlike barnacle geese that come over in winter in the river across from where I live, who fly in family groups and take it in turns to be the guy in front, these guys travel back separately. They arrive separately and they travel back separately. They all have this thing that they must go. Now, the mother and father are the last to leave, and they fly back to where they came from, Africa. But how is it that their chicks, who only know my back passage, my garden, and a few of the neighbours' gardens, know the direction to go to reach Africa, to go all the way down Scotland, England, over the Channel, all the way down France, Portugal, Spain, over the Med, into Africa and flying down the coast. How do they know where to go? These are little birds with a brain about the size of a small pea, and yet their sat-nav is extraordinary. No, we can't even find the next road unless we've got the sat-nav in our phone, to find a road in the next town. These guys are travelling thousands of miles to a location they've never been before, ever in their lives. They only knew my back passage and the few houses in my village, and yet they managed to negotiate their way thousands of miles away to Africa. And incredibly, how is it that the following year, for the ones that survived, they managed to fly all the way back, make their way all the way back to my back passage? It is incredible. It is incredible. It's a small thing, but it's just a small bit of nature in this wonderful world of nature that it just blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind. And there's no answer. Scientists have no answer to this. The worst thing about this is our quest to find out where we came from sees us presently spending billions of pounds trying to find out if there is life on Mars. Because if there is life on Mars, it may explain how life came to Earth. We're on this planet. Why don't you just look at this planet first? If you've spent all this time looking at this planet and can't get the answers of where we came from, you ain't going to find it in a barren planet called Mars. And so far, they've been there for quite a while now, and there is no sign of life. Spending billions of pounds to eventually come back and say, guess what, folks, what? There is no life on Mars. And yet those billions of pounds could have been spent in trying to ensure that life survives on this planet, that we don't continually destroy it. It's amazing that there's a country like India has its own space program, yet there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people in India who live in extreme poverty. They have no clean running water. They have to burn fossil fuels to get any hot water at all, and yet their country's spending billions of money for a shit space program. It's bizarre. Eventually, we should concentrate on trying to conserve this planet and all life on it without trying to venture to other planets. And yet I'm the person who in 1969, when the first man walked on the moon, was up with my mother about 4 o'clock in the morning in England at the time. I watched Armstrong take those first steps, and I thought it was the greatest thing that I'd ever seen in my life. And actually I still think it's man's greatest achievement. But meanwhile in America, people were complaining about the millions and billions of pounds spent getting man on the moon when there was poverty in America. And I didn't think they had a point. We had a school debate in I think early 70s when the Apollo space program was still going on in my junior school, and the teacher said to us, right, we're going to have two debates here. We're going to have one debate on should we throw a lot of money for the space program, knowing that in one time our planet's going to become overcrowded and there's not going to be enough food to sustain us, or do we get that money now to try and stop people in Africa starving? And of course I was the one who was going on saying yeah space program. How wrong was I? I wish I could go back and slap that wee guy's head and say, you don't know what you're talking about. Unfortunately, all the ideals, all the expectations, all the optimism that we had of anybody that was brought up in the 60s, that has been shit right down the pan when we're now faced with a damned planet. So really we should be putting all that resource into saving this planet. But unfortunately, because we are absolutely obsessed with this, where do we come from? This is the situation we're in. So I am quite happy at the moment within myself. I'm not saying I'm happy to acknowledge the fact that when I die that there is no extra life for me. I still, to be honest with you, wish I was one of these. Before the witnesses came to my door and I went to Sunday school, I was quite happy in the knowledge that I believe God was generally a good bloke. Now I know he's not. That the Bible's really a good book. No, it's not. And that when I die, if I've led a relatively good life, that I will go to the heavens and join now my stepfather and grandmother and grandmother and friends that I've lost. But now I've had to acknowledge the fact that no, there isn't. Once I die, that is it. There's no extra life. And And I won't have that comfort that when I lose loved ones and I'm round their hospital bed and at the last moments of agony, that I think, well, at least their suffering isn't in vain. And I'll know, my God, you know, that there will not be any comfort for me. And ironically, I might have mentioned this before, but my cousin, who's brought up a witness and left when she was 16, when her father recently died, and he died of a horrible disease which just broke a really strong man and reduced him to like weighing nothing. And he was a Jehovah's Witness, he was an elder, and he believed, of course, that he's waiting for his resurrection, for his second life. And when he died, she said, that's it, my dad's finally got his wings, because she believed he's gone to heaven, even though that's the last place he wanted to go. But unfortunately, because we cannot accept death, this comfort that we draw from thinking that people haven't sacrificed maybe their lives to bring up my brother and my sisters and put us first, and they never had the things that I've now got, and now that they've died some horrible shitty death, at least their sacrifices have been worth it. Unfortunately, I've come to recognise that unfortunately that is it. Some people just will go through this life and they will literally just put other people first, and there isn't a reward apart from maybe the high esteem that the survivors hold for them, but once they pass away, that's it. So, you know, it's a tricky one. So I've reluctantly accepted that fact, but I'm quite happy to accept the fact that when it comes to the question of how we got here, that I don't know. And it isn't good to know all the answers anyway. What a boring life it would be if we knew the answer to everything. I'm quite happy to live the rest of my life not knowing the answer to where we came from. Even if we found out where we come from, just establish we came from so and so. Oh, okay, fair dues. Right, shit, I've got work tomorrow. It won't affect me at all. And I'm quite happy not to know the answer to that question. I just wish the rest of humankind were happy not to spend billions of pounds trying to find the answer to that question, and also just accept that when we die, we're dead, and we could all stop fighting each other, and instead of wasting our time in acts of worship, we could put all that time into trying to improve our environment. Anyway, that is it. I got through that with really hardly any mentions of Lloyd Evans. Shit, I've just mentioned Lloyd Evans. Anyway. Oh, by the way, somebody's been asking, will I do a video about my comical take on the Lloyd Evans apostate merchandise? Sorry, reluctant apostate merchandise. Yes, I will do. I'm going to do it probably this week, because I've got the rest of the week off. So we'll do it probably this week sometime. I've just got to think about it. And other people have been saying is, why don't you put up some music? There's no point putting music up on this channel, because I have a music channel for my music. So if you're interested, I will put 2 links in the description, which I think which will link to my other channel, because even my other channel with my music, I can't even find it. If you cut into YouTube and put in Always the Way, you get everything apart from the band's music. Although there's an easier way of doing this. If you want to listen to music that I produce by myself and with other people in Always the Way, including former Jehovah's Witnesses as well, all you have to do is say this simple sentence: Alexa, play songs by Always the Way.
Here's some music by Always the Way on Amazon Music.
Well, there you go. It does work. Anyway, this is a really good song. It's called Criffle, and it's one of my latest recordings. Anyway, I'll leave you with Always the Way and Criffle and Alexa. Bye.